everyone, welcome back to Daily Devotions with Pastor Peter. We are in Genesis chapter 10 today, and so let's read Genesis chapter 10 together, and this is what it says. This is the account of the families of Shem, Ham, and Japheth, the three sons of Noah. Many children were born to them after the great flood. The descendants of Japheth were Gomer, Magog, Madai, Javan, Tubal, Meshech, and Tiras. The descendants of Gomer were Ashkenaz, Riphath, and Togarmah. The descendants of Javan were Elisha, Tarish, Kittim, and Rodanim. Their descendants became the sea-faring peoples that spread out to various lands, each identified by its own language, clan, and national identity. The descendants of Ham were Cush, Mizraim, Put, and Canaan. The descendants of Cush were Seba, Havilah, Sabta, Rama, Sabaktekah. The descendants of Rama were Sheba and Dedan. Cush was also the ancestor of Nimrod, who was the first heroic warrior on earth. Since he was the greatest hunter in the world, his name became proverbial. People would say, "This man is like Nimrod, the greatest hunter in the world." He built his great kingdom in the land of Babylonia, with the cities of Babylon, Erech, Akkad, and Canaan, and from there he expanded his territory here to Assyria, building the cities of Nineveh, Rehoboth-ir, Kala, and Resen, between the Nineveh and Caleb. Mizraim was the ancestor of the Ludites, Anamites, Lehabites, Naphtuhites, Pathrusites, Casluhites, and the Caphtorites, from whom the Philistines came. Canaan's oldest son, Sidon, was the ancestor of the Sidonians. Canaan was also the ancestor of the Hittites, Jebusites, Amorites, Girgashites, Hivites, Arkites, Sinites, Arvadites, Zemarites, and Hamathites. The Canaanite clans eventually spread out, and the territory of Canaan extended from the Sidon to the north, and Gerar and Gaza in the south, and east as far as Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, Zeboim, and Lasha. These were the descendants of Ham, identified by clan, language, territory, national identity. Sons were also born to Shem, the older brother of Japheth. Shem was the ancestor of all the descendants of Eber. The descendants of Shem were Elam, Ashur, Arphaxad, Lud, and Aram. The descendants of Aram were Uz, Hul, Gether, and Mash. Arphaxad was the father of Shelah, and Shelah was the father of Eber. Eber had two sons, the first named Peleg, which means division, for during his lifetime the people of the world were divided into different language groups. His brother's name was Joktan. Joktan was the ancestor Almodad, Shelef, Hazarmavath, Jared, Hadoram, Uzal, Dikla, Obal, Abimiel, Sheba, Ophir, Havilah, and Jabab. All these were descendants of Joktan. The territory they occupied had extended from Mesha all the way to Sephir in the eastern mountains. These were the descendants of Shem, identified by clan, language, territory, and national identity. These are the clans that descended from Noah's son, arranged by nation according to their lines of descent. All the nations of the earth descended from these great clans after the great flood. My goodness, I read all that and fumbled through every single one of them. So, if I got any names wrong, realize that I am not perfect, and I'm still not perfect, I guess, and I don't read these names on a regular basis. Most of the time when I read the Bible, I don't read them out loud. I do recommend reading out loud, not for this point, but the Word of God needs to be listened to as well as read for us to really soak it in. But what can we learn from this? We learn a few things. The name Nimrod is not actually a bad name. I used to call people you Nimrod as an insult, but Nimrod just means great hunter. So, again, I guess I was complimenting everyone I was trying to insult. Now I feel like an idiot. Anyways, this passage shows us a few things. That the God of the Bible has specific order. And for us to see records of names, it allows us to see that this is not a fairy tale. I think that's my takeaway from this chapter. You're probably thinking, what the heck did you get out of this chapter? I didn't get anything. Well, the reality is that when you look at this chapter, it's not a fairy tale. These are real names, real people, lineages of people, and people would trace back their lineage. For me, I wouldn't want to trace back my lineage to see how far I could go, and I've traced it back a couple generations, at least my spiritual heritage, and I could draw that back 4 or 5 generations for myself. But for this, for us to be able to draw our lineage back to creation, back to the restart that we have here, that's pretty amazing. That's pretty amazing for the people to do that. And Jewish people can trace their names and their blood back to the beginning, as we see here. So as we look into the book of the Bible, the book of Genesis, and we see these, don't disregard them. Read through them and make it a challenge to read through these names, but also work hard in understanding that, it's important to have a lineage. It gives credibility. And even for our families too, in our country, in our history, we need to go back, and it's detailed, and some of us may not care, but for us to know that this took place, this really happened, allows us to see that God is real. His Bible is truthful, factual, and it points back to Him. And that's the point of all this. So, 1, don't call someone Nimrod unless they're a good hunter. 2, know that genealogies stand for us to see not only that these are real people, but these are real stories, and these things could take place because it happened, and all these people came from that. This is how they spread out. Interesting, isn't it? I have that chart that shows all the breakdown of the peoples. Pretty fascinating. I don't know how I'm going to use this, but I'd like to once in a while just sit and stare and look in fascination of how we got to where we are today based on all the major events of history. The Bible is legit. We'll see you in the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.